Bialy,
Oseo.
we've heard about English, Spanish, French, Japanese, but how much do you know about Native American languages?
English, Spanish, French, Hindi, Farsi, Gaelic, Russian. These languages all belong to one language family known as the Indo-European language family. So consider the diversity in the Americas.
So in North America, we have about 58 language families or groups. In Central America or Middle America, we've got 17 language families. In South of America, possibly as many as 111 language families or groups.
Oh. Well, we can't talk about all 186, but we can cover some of the prominent 22.
The first one we'll talk about is Eskimo-Aleut. So this language family is found all the way from the Arctic to Greenland to Alaska, including the Aleutian Islands, and some of these are actually considered to be in Siberia. These are often called Eskimo by outsiders, but really they're actually different groups, such as the Inuit, Yupik, and Aleut. Inuit has at least 100,000 speakers, Yupik has 100, and Aleut has 150 speakers. Yupik and Aleut split about 4,000 years ago, with the original homeland thought to be somewhere in western coastal Alaska. Possibly one of the first Native American languages to make contact with the European language, with the Norsemen. And this language family has borrowings from English, Russian, and Dutch because of its history and contact with all of these. There's some emerging research that's connecting it with the Chukchi languages in North Asia, but this has not yet been solidified. Most writing in these languages is done with the Latin script, but in Quebec, the Inuit there use the Inuktitut syllabary. We've gotten some borrowings from this language group, including Kayak, Igloo, and Ilanak. Languages in this group tend to be what's called polysynthetic. So polysynthetic basically means that you add a whole ton of grammatical information just into one word, which allows you to make an entire sentence just from one very, very large word. Another group in this area is Na-Dene. So Na-Dene has two main branches, being Tlingit and Ayak Athabascan. Haida was once placed here, but it's no longer considered to be part of this group. And actually, even Tlingit's placement in this group is considered to be controversial. And if Tlingit is to be removed, then we would just be left with Ayak Athabascan.
What did Haida do?
The geography of these languages is found from Alaska to western Canada, and one subgroup actually moved all the way to New Mexico and Arizona. You might have heard of the Navajo and Apachean languages. So that's right, the linguistic cousins of Navajo and Apache are all the way up north. But despite being so close to Alaska, these languages don't have many borrowings with Eskimo or Inuit languages, as you might have thought. Why? Well, one proposal is that they actually originated east of Alaska. One group went west, and another group went south. And this actually kind of checks out because the Apachean languages are said to have more in common with their cousins in Alaska than actually with their cousins in British Columbia. Now, the Apachean group being so interesting for its migration all the way south, they may have entered the southwest around the year 1000 or 1500, which closely coincides with the time that many of the ancient Puebloan cities were being abandoned. Ayak is another group that split up early from the other Athabascans around the year 1500 BC. Ayak, however, is no longer spoken, and the last native speaker passed away in 2008. Now, north of Mexico, if you don't count Mexico, Navajo is the #1 largest Native American language. It's known for being used against Japan in the Second World War, and being a large language, it boasts elementary schools that teach language, a newspaper. It has an official dub for one of the Star Wars movies. Finding Nemo has also been officially dubbed into Navajo. Some characteristics of Navajo is that for an English speaker, it tends to be considered a very difficult language to learn because it has high and low tones, it has a lot of consonants and a lot of sibilant kind of consonants. Also because of its grammatical, the grammatical formation in the verbs.
Alright, next we have the Algic family. The Algic family has 16 surviving languages, others in the process of revitalization. It's also the most widespread language family of the eastern woodlands of Northern America. It's also known as Algonquian, but the term Algic just refers to Algonquian with the inclusion of Iwiok and Yuro of Northern California. Algonquians were the first in Northern America to come in contact with the English and the Dutch. as they occupied the coastlines. And it's in the Algic language is divided, or the Algic family, I'm sorry, is divided into four major branches: Eastern, Central, Plains, and California. Most of the languages of the Eastern branch unfortunately went extinct due to the early contact with Europeans. But the biggest to survive is a language called Mi'kmaq, which with around 7,000 speakers. The biggest branch would be the central one. As far as numbers of speakers, it has Cree, which includes around 100,000 speakers out of an ethnic population of around 400,000. It is perhaps the biggest Native American language in size, encompassing a good portion of the eastern woodlands and the Great Plains, mostly in Canada. Then there's Ojibwe, which has around 100,000 speakers as well. That and then occupies the western Great Lakes region. The most prominent member of the Plains branch would probably be Cheyenne, with about 2,000 speakers. And then another well-known Plains Algic language would be Blackfoot. Some common words we use every day in American English come from Algic languages, such as skunk, moose, possum, moccasin, as well as place names such as Massachusetts, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Delaware. Common characteristics: Algonquian languages or Algic languages tend to have lax vowels and more consonant driven. And overall, the whole family boasts 200,000 speakers. Next, we have the Iroquoian family, also of the eastern woodlands. There are 7 surviving languages out of the 14 known languages to have existed in the family, and a few are also in the process of being revitalized. Iroquoian originates in the eastern Great Lakes region. It's one of the major families of the eastern woodlands, and it's also exclusively found in the eastern woodlands. The speakers of these languages are well known as founders of some of the more complex societies, such as the Iroquois League or Haudenosaunee, people of the Longhouse. We won't get into too much of the detail, but basically Iroquoians divided into northern and southern branches. Cherokee is the only known language of the southern branch, located in southern Appalachia. Cherokee has around 12,000 speakers, making it the biggest Iroquoian language of an ethnic population of maybe around 400,000, more or less, depending on how one defines being Cherokee. And it's also known for having its own writing system, the syllabary, created by Chocoan. Some place names that come from Iroquoian languages are Ontario, Niagara, and Tennessee. Some characteristics are a general lack of bilabials, tone, aspirated consonants, and nasal vowels. And they're also polysynthetic. So overall, the family has about 16,000 speakers. Then going a little further south, we have the Muskogean family. There are 6 surviving languages in this family. It originates in the southeast of what is now the United States. Another one of the 3 major families of the eastern woodlands. And they are the founders of some of the more complex Mayan societies. Major languages of this family include Choctaw of Mississippi and Louisiana, with almost 10,000 speakers out of an ethnic population of 160,000 people. Another one would be Muskogean, also known as Creek, of Georgia, Alabama, and northern Florida, which also includes Seminole, which is a dialect of Muskogee, with around 4,500 speakers. Overall, the whole family has around 15,000 speakers.
Next on our list is the Siouan language family. They make up a large part of the Plains region, such as the North Dakota and the Montana region. Some of the subgroups within this language family are Catawban, Core Siouan, Missouri River Siouan, and Mandan. So some languages are, for example, Catawban. It's extinct, but there is a small list of words that have survived. It appears that many passed away from smallpox epidemics. Others were scattered from wars, and the rest of the survivors moved in with some Cherokee and some Choctaw nations.
Oh, they were all the way in the Carolinas, I believe.
All the way out there.
Yeah.
Oh, and in deep into the Plains region is the Lakota language. It's one of the most famous Native American groups. Their culture has been used in Hollywood. They're pretty famous historically due to their wars with the U.S. Military. They defeated the U.S. 7th Cavalry. They defeated Custer's battalion. Today, the Lakota live on the reservations, with most of the speakers being lost pretty recently, dropping from 6,000 to only 2,000 first language speakers in just the last about 10 years. But there are a lot of efforts to revitalize Lakota, and there's many teachers out there who are promoting the language. Some other famous languages in the Siouan group include Crow, Osage, Omaha, and Winnebago. Now, Siouan gave English some words such as tipi, Wakinian, and Yaupan, which is a type of tea. Next on our list is Uto-Aztecan. So the Uto-Aztecan language family is one of the most widespread language families that we'll cover today. That it's covering a region from Oregon all the way down to Nicaragua. Now, the research suggests that they started as one group about 4,000 to 5,000 years ago, somewhere either in central California, Arizona, or some other place in the American Southwest. A split occurred, and one group went south, the other one stayed north. But I should mention that the groups didn't just suddenly split from each other, but more or less moved in terms of waves. So many of the languages that you've heard before come from this language family. For example, the Aztecs. The Aztecs spoke Nahuatl, hence the name Uto-Aztecan for this grouping. Today, the Nahuatl language, that's still the most spoken language of the Uto-Aztecan languages. And from Mexico north, all the way north, it's the most widely spoken language of the Native American languages. Also in Mexico, we have language groups such as the Huichol and the Cora, who are pretty well known for their spirituality regarding the peyote ceremonies. The Raramuri, who are famous for being long-distance ultramarathon runners and recently have a new video game out. The Yaqui, who are famous for their uprisings against the Mexican government, and the Yaquis are a binational group. So there are Yaquis who live on the U.S. side of the border and on the Mexican side of the border. In the U.S., of course, we also have Uto-Aztecan languages as well too. Hopi, Shoshone, Paiute. These languages are all Uto-Aztecan. Many of the languages in Southern California, from Los Angeles to San Bernardino, are also languages of the Uto-Aztecan stock as well. Some of the characteristics of Uto-Aztecan languages is that they're very agglutinative. So basically we're seeing that they also put a lot of grammatical information into just one word. So one verb can be very long. Like for example, Nimitzon Tlaxcal Chihuilia, I make tortillas for you, but that's just one word.
It's the same as polysynthetic, right? Agglutinative.
It's similar, but languages like we covered Eskimo, like the Eskimo-Aleut languages are much more on that spectrum. They're much more further up ahead on that spectrum, whereas now it's a little bit less. So it's given the term agglutinative, but they're very similar kind of characteristics. Languages like Nahuatl or Aztec gave us many words into English, a ton, including atlat or arolaro, avocado, axolotl or axolotl, cacao, chia, chiclets, chili, chipotle, chocolate, tamal, tomato, and countless words, hundreds of words, if not thousands, that have also entered Mexican Spanish. Next group is the Hokan language family. Now this group might not technically exist as a group. It was proposed by Roland Dixon and Alfred Kroeber, later expanded by Edward Sapir, and ever since it was proposed in the early 1900s, there's been a lot of debate as to whether or not it exists or who's part of this at all. There's been more research done more recently, which has kind of fired up the research into this whole area. So many linguists today do believe that this proposal does exist and it is valid, but that there's not enough research yet to give it much credibility. Some of these groupings include languages such as Pomoan, Chimariko, Yanan, Karok, Shastan, Achumawi, Washo, Eselan, Salina, Yuman, Cochimi, Seri, Coahuilteco, Comicrudan, Tequislatec, and Jicaquean.
Isn't that last one in Honduras?
Yeah, the last one's all the way in Honduras. Comicrudan, Coahuilteco, these are, they sound Spanish because they're actually in Mexico, or were in Mexico, and others are found in the United States and California regions. For example, the Eselan language is in Monterey County, California. Today it's extinct, went extinct in the 1800s. Salinan was spoken in San Luis Obispo in Monterey County, but is today extinct. Cochimi was spoken in Baja California and is today extinct as well. The human languages, though, are still spoken. They're preserved in Baja California, Arizona. Languages such as Kumeyaay, Havasupai, Papai, Cocopai, and Kiliwa. These are all in critical danger of extinction, and lots of these languages are also on both sides of the border, I should also mention. Next up is Penutian. So Penutian is another grouping which is also debatable, and it was also proposed by Dixon and Kroeber. So again, most linguists think that it probably exists, but it still needs more research and data to really confirm how it exists and who's part of this group. Currently, it's believed that it's to encompass languages such as the Wintuan groups, Maiduan Yokutsan, and Miwok Costanoan. So these are languages in the Oregon and California regions as well. The Wintuan subgroup, all the languages in this group have gone extinct pretty recently, except for Patwin, which has currently at least one fluent speaker left. Maiduan, all the languages in this group have gone extinct except for Konkao, with less than 10 fluent speakers. Yokuts is several different varieties of Yokuts, but of all of these groups, 2 of them currently are still spoken today. One of them being Valley Yokuts in Central California. Yushin, also known as Miwok Costanoan, or also known as Ohlone, that's spoken around the San Francisco region. The word Yosemite, for example, comes from one of these languages. These languages gave English words such as abalone and kamas.
Potluck too.
And potluck.
Which is from Chinook jargon.
Chinook jargon. Oh, that's right. Chinook jargon is another really well-known language in that group. It's also pretty well known because of its interesting history, being it was a trade language, so it's actually a Native American language, but it also has significant influences from other languages from across the world, being very mixed in its history.
Alright, going further up north a bit, we have the Salishan language family. It has around 13 surviving languages. It's found in the Pacific Northwest region and the Columbia Plateau of present-day United States, in states such as Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Montana, and the present-day Canadian province of British Columbia. Some characteristics of this family is that the languages are very consonant-heavy, and there's even full words that contain no vowels, just pure consonants. They are also pretty polysynthetic, tenseless, and maybe even nounless. There are around 2,300 speakers in the whole family, the biggest language being Okanagan with at least 600 speakers.
Next up on our list is the Oto-Manguean language family group. Now this is one of the oldest families, language families in central Mexico. So they've had roots in central Mexico for a long time. These languages are notorious for having an incredible amount of diversity. For example, Zapotec, Mixtec languages in Oaxaca are reported to have over 30 varieties each, and it's on a dialect continuum. So what that means is that from one town to another, they might understand each other, but as you go farther off to further towns, the ability to understand each other is lost, meaning that there's different languages that you would consider those. These are common in Oaxaca, Puebla, and Guerrero region. But there are other languages in the Oto-Manguean language family group which go all the way down to Nicaragua. Some of the major groupings include Otopame or Chinanteco, Tlapanec Mangue, Popolocan and Zapotec, and Amuzgo and Mixtec. Mixtec and Zapotec have lots of speakers. Mixtec has over almost 500,000 speakers, and Zapotec has almost 800,000 speakers. All of these groups adding up to about 2 million speakers today. Some of their characteristics is tonal. They're known for being tonal languages. Triqui is one of the languages in this group that has some of the most number of tones out of any language in the world. And in fact, it's number one in Mexico. Going back to Mixtec, Mixtec developed a pictorial-based writing system, and Zapotec developed a complex writing system. Exactly how it worked is still being researched this time. Now, lots of Zapotec and Mixtec speakers have moved to the U.S., either to New York or to Central California, to work in the fields in that region. Mixe-Zoque group is another very influential group in Mexico, and it's not a huge group, but it is very ancient in Mexican history. So the Olmec culture is associated with the Mixe-Zoque language group. It's believed that the ancient Olmec culture spoke a language that belonged to the Mixe-Zoque group. And the Olmecs are famous for being one of the first civilizations, almost like the mother civilization of all of Mexico, and it definitely influenced all of the future civilizations in Mexico. The Iztapan culture is also another big cultural civilization that also influenced its predecessors, and it's also believed to be Mixe-Zoquean as well. So a lot of the Mesoamerican calendar, the hieroglyphic writing, possibly even the word cacao comes from Mixe-Zoquean today.
Alright, going a little further south, we have the Mayan family, which I'm sure most of you all heard of the Mayans. So it's probably it is the major language family in southern Mesoamerica, and one of the only families to have produced complex writing. The other one, possibly the Zapotec, as John mentioned earlier. The ancestors of the present-day speakers are responsible for some of the world's greatest civilizations. There are almost 30 surviving Mayan languages, and Mayan actually isn't a language; it's a family, and they're not all mutually intelligible. That is, they can't all understand each other. So it's native to northern Central America and the present-day southeastern Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, Honduras, and El Salvador. There are almost 8 million speakers in the family, which probably makes it the biggest native language family in North America as far as number of speakers. It's divided principally in the Huastecan, Yucatecan, Western, and Eastern branches. So as we're talking about the writing, was mostly done in what's called ancient Cholti, which originated in the southern lowlands. It was a literary language of the Mayan world, kind of like how ancient Greek or Latin was to Europe. The biggest Mayan languages, the first one we have Quiche, which has almost 3 million speakers, and it's spoken in the southern highlands of Guatemala. Then you have Yucatec Maya, almost 1 million speakers, and it's spoken in the Yucatan Peninsula. It was also featured in a movie came out about 10 years ago called Apocalypto, which I'm sure a lot of y'all have seen. So actually, the only languages to go by the name Maya actually are Yucatec Maya and its close relative Mopan. Then we have Tlachiquel, almost 1 million speakers. It's spoken in the highlands, the southern highlands of Guatemala. It's also closely related to Quiche. We have Quechua. There's around 800,000 speakers in the northern highlands and southern lowlands of Guatemala and Belize. Then we have Mam, around 500,000 speakers in the southern highlands of Guatemala and a part of Chiapas. Then also in Chiapas we have Tzotzil and Celtal, who have each of them have around 500,000 speakers. Some characteristics in Mayan languages are glottal stops, adjective, consonants. Next, going a little further south, we have Misumalpan. Misumalpan is native to Central America, mostly Honduras and Nicaragua. Originally a part of the hypothesized macro-Chibchan proposal, but it saw, according to linguists, such a connection now is too distant to establish. One of the main families of the Istmo-Colombian subregion of the greater Circum-Caribbean region. The biggest language by far in this family is Mosquito, which has around 200,000 speakers on the Caribbean coast of Honduras and Nicaragua. The family only has 3 surviving languages: Mosquito, Mayagna, which has various dialects, and Ulua. Cacalpera and Matagalpa also were formerly spoken in the family, but now are extinct, unfortunately. So in all, the family has around 208,000 speakers, the bulk of which belong to Mosquito. And the speakers of the other 2 languages are increasingly shifting to Mosquito. Alright, then going down south a little more, we have Chibchan. So Chibchan is native to southern Central America and northwestern South America. And they're kind of in the heart of what's known as the Istmo-Colombian region. There are 17 remaining languages, more or less. The name comes from the ancient Chibchan civilization of present-day Colombia, whose language actually went extinct. Most of the family is part of a more or less continuous region from southern Nicaragua all the way down to northern Colombia, with the exception of a language called Pech of Honduras. The proto-language is thought to have originated in the area where the present-day borders of Costa Rica and Panama are. Some words that come from Chibchan languages is Bogota was actually the name of a Chibchan language, which is also, as you know, the capital of Colombia. It has, overall, the family has around 300,000 speakers. The most notable languages include Guaymi, which is the biggest. Guaymi is spoken in Panama and a small part of Costa Rica. It has around 170,000 speakers. Then you have Kuna. Kuna has around 60,000 speakers, mostly in eastern Panama and in a small part of neighboring Colombia. And then we have Kogi. Kogi has about 10,000 speakers in the Andes of northern Colombia. And then going further south even more, we have the Chocoan family. Chocoan is native to western Colombia and southeastern Panama, and a small part of northwestern Ecuador. Has a little more than 200,000 speakers in all, the family. The proto-language is thought to have originated near what is now Medellin, Colombia. The Quimbaya and Zenu civilizations of Colombia are thought to have spoken Chocoan languages. They also inhabit one of the largest areas of tropical rainforests in the Americas, in a region known as the Darien Gap, named as such because it is a gap in the middle of the Pan-American Highway. There might have been as much as 6 languages in the past, but only 2 survived, Embera and Waunana. Alright, so Embera is actually a dialect continuum, or a group of closely related languages, which in all have around 200,000 speakers. The following are the 3 bigger varieties. We have Northern Embera, which is the largest. It has around 140,000 speakers. It is further split into West Embera, or also known as Embera proper, and Catillo, which is spoken more in the highlands. There are also different sub-varieties, but we won't go into that in this video. But it's spoken principally in Colombia and Panama. Next we have Chami, which is spoken in the mountainous regions of western Colombia, and it has around 8,000 speakers. Then you have Sia, or Saiha. It's spoken in southwestern Colombia, around the coast as well, and it's in a neighboring part of Ecuador, and it has around 8,000 speakers as well. Then last but not least, we have Waunana, or Waunan, also spoken in Colombia and Panama, and has around 10,000 speakers. Some characteristics, they share, like in other tropical South American languages, they're characterized by nasal vowels and pitch accents. Alright, going further into South America, we have Arawakan. Perhaps the biggest family of the Americas, along with Uto-Aztecan, by amount of languages and the area it covers. So it comprises of about 50 different languages, which can be found from all the way from northern Argentina to the Bahamas of the Caribbean, at least formerly, but not in a continuous block. So the whole family has around 700,000 speakers, and it's thought to have originated in the Orinoco River Basin. It's native to the Caribbean islands, the northern coast of South America, the Amazon rainforest, and parts of the Chaco savanna region of South America. Some notable languages include, probably the most notable one is Taino, although now extinct. It was the first language of the Americas for Europeans to come in contact with. It's native to the greater Antilles Islands of the Caribbean, which include present-day Cuba, the Bahamas, Jamaica, Haiti, Dominican Republic, and Puerto Rico. As a result, a lot of words in both English and Spanish are of Taino origin. For example, canoe, tobacco, papaya, iguana, cassava, ceiba, cacique, maize or maize, tuna, hammock, hurricane, potato, ají, kai, and even the names of Cuba, Jamaica, Haiti, Boricua, Bahamas, and more. There's actually present-day efforts to revive the Taino language. Next we have Garifuna, which deserves a video of its own, but I'll just give a short overview. Originally spoken in the Lesser Antilles, but now mostly spoken in the Caribbean coast of Honduras, and to a lesser extent Guatemala and Belize. But it's actually the only native language that's spoken mostly by people of African descent, and it has around 200,000 speakers. Then next we have Guajiro, or Wayu, which is the biggest Arawakan language. It's spoken in the Guajiro Desert region of northern Colombia and Venezuela, and this one has around 400,000 speakers. And then we have the Cariban family, which they're kind of traditional enemies with the Arawak, because they have a kind of this more or less the same region. They're native to the northern coast of South America and the Lesser Antilles. They're also found in parts of Brazil. And this, as you can imagine, is the origin of where we get the word, the name Caribbean. Consists of 2 to 3 dozen languages, depending on what one considers a language versus a dialect of a language. There are around 70,000 speakers in the family in all. Makushi is definitely the biggest language with around 30,000 speakers in Guyana, Venezuela, and Brazil. And next, we have, going further into South America, we have the Tupian family, which is one of the biggest language families of South America in number of speakers, number of languages, and geographic area. So it comprises of about 70 different languages, and with around 7 million speakers of each of the language, the bulk of which speak Guarani. So Tupian gives us words like we use every day, like jaguar, or piranha, tapioca, manioc, and more. It's native to the Amazon rainforest and to much of the rest of Brazil, actually. And the proto-language dates back to some 5,000 years ago, where it divided into eastern and western branches. The biggest subgroup is Tupi-Guarani of the eastern branch. It has most of the languages and the biggest, most well-known languages of the family. The most well-known languages are Tupinamba, aka Lingua Geral, which used to be the main lingua franca of the Amazon, but now serves as a lingua franca in a smaller region, spoken in the Rio Negro region of Brazil, Colombia, and Venezuela. Has around 30,000 speakers. Then we have Guarani. Guarani is definitely the biggest Tupian language, and actually the second biggest Native American language after Quechua. It has around almost 7 million speakers. It's native to and spoken in Paraguay, Brazil, northern Argentina, and eastern Bolivia. And even the name Paraguay comes from a Guarani word. It is co-official in Paraguay too with Spanish, where the majority of the population actually speak it along with Spanish. And it gained popularity in Paraguay mostly via the Jesuit missions. However, Guarani varieties in other countries such as Brazil are in critical danger. Some of the characteristics are a lot of prenasal consonants, pitch accent, and tone in some languages.
Another language family group is the Quechuan languages. This is the Native American language family with the most speakers in the Americas. So it's boasting between 8 to 11, if not more, million speakers who speak Quechua. And of course, Quechua is made up of different varieties. The south and the north, for example, have a little bit more mutual intelligibility with each other than the central varieties, which are considered to be more diversified. Quechua is very widespread as it was the language used with the Inca Empire. So its geography is found in Peru, Ecuador, parts of Bolivia, Chile, and a little bit in Argentina and Colombia as well. Northern Quechuan languages border the Amazonian tribes. The main languages here are Quechua, of course, in Peru, Quichua in Ecuador, and Ancash Quechua, which is in Peru. Some of its characteristics, Quechua is also very agglutinative, just like many of the other languages we've seen today. Words in Quechua are typically pretty large and carry a lot of information. Quechuan languages has given us into English several words such as ayahuasca, coca, jerky, llama, and pampa. Another group is Aymaran. Aymaran is most common in Bolivia, where it has at least 2 million speakers. Aymara is the major language in this language family group. Hakaru and Cauqui are other related languages, and they're in Peru. It's been in pretty close proximity with the Quechuan languages, being right next to them and sharing a border with them in the Peru and Bolivia regions. So there are many proposals that are trying to kind of combine them and say that they're actually one language family. They share about 25% of their vocabulary, and they have a lot of similarities in the sound structure or phonology and as well as in their grammar. However, because they also have been next to each other for some time, it's also possible that they just borrowed these features from each other and now look similar. So there's not enough evidence yet to really combine these two yet, but it is something that linguists have been looking into.
Isn't that proposal called Quechua-Modern?
Which combines both of them into one word. Aymaran also gave us the English word alpaca.
And then going further south, last but not least, we have the Araucanian language family, which is located principally in the modern-day countries of Chile and Argentina. It only has 2 surviving languages, one being Mapuche, also known as Mapudungun, which is the bigger one with around 200,000 speakers. The Mapuche are known to be fierce warriors that have always, fought for their sovereignty. Next we have the Huilliche, which some consider to be a variant of Mapuche, but they kind of have their own ethnic identity, and they boast around 17,000 speakers, principally in Chile. Well, we hope you enjoyed this video brought to you by LDCP.
Let us know if you have any questions or any comments. Please put them below.
And stay tuned for more in-depth videos from these American families and also those of Africa, Oceania, and more.